We're here with Drew Curtis, who is the CEO and founder of Fark.com. Drew, you made a whole bunch of really good points today, but one thing I didn't really understand is what exactly was the happy accident for Fark.com? Could you explain to our audience?
Yeah, I started it back in 19... You can hold that if you want. No, go ahead. Basically, the happy accident is that it was my personal website. I started it out like that, and then it started taking off, and I just kind of went with it. I didn't really start trying to make a business out of it until 3 years later. So a lot of this stuff about, like, where did the community come from, how do you do that, I have no idea, because it happened and I wasn't paying attention. So that's why it was a happy accident. And I tell people the only thing I will take credit for is not screwing it up. That's it. That's going to be on my tombstone. That's my epitaph.
Not screwing something up is actually really hard online.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
One of my favorite things that you said was that a community is like a 5-year-old. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, basically, you have to let them know that they can't do everything, and that was one of the conceits I thought that Dig and to a certain extent Reddit have had for forever, where they would say, you're in charge, this is your site, when clearly you're not, and Dig pretty much demonstrated it right off the bat by just changing everything without consulting anybody. Whereas if you're up front from the beginning and say, guys, this is my site, you can't do anything you want, that kind of changes the expectation level they have. And when I explain Fark to people in the community, because it's a house party at my house, and if you want to show up and tell me my furniture sucks and food's terrible and the people here are all assholes, I'm throwing you out. And I don't care if you're right or wrong about that, but that's basically, this is who I want to hang out with, and that's how it's going to be. The good news is that I would rather hang out with everybody, and I look for reasons not to get rid of people. So it's not like we're limiting people all the time. But at the end of the day, some people are just unsalvageable, and you have to get rid of them. But so the greater point of the community is you have to set baseline levels of expectation. You can't be racist. You can't be sexist. You can be sexist if it's funny. You can be racist if it's funny. But you can't actually mean it. And so, at a certain point, too, you have, when you have these, you can set up a whole bunch of rules, and your last rule should be, but we reserve the right any time to make a gray area around one or two of these in certain situations. Because at the end of the day, it isn't all about, oh, but wait, I followed all your rules. It's like, yeah, but you're still an asshole, so go. And once you have that baseline expectation, then, it works out a lot better because people don't go into a rage when you go around it.
You also talked a little bit about cross-pollination and the importance that it can have in growing communities that are both competitive with each other or that work with each other. Could you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yeah, essentially there's no competition on the internet. Every time somebody asks me who your competition is, I say, well, we don't have any competition. For the most part, if we had, like I said in the talk, if we had somebody exactly like us and we linked to them, we would gain each other's audience. It doesn't make any sense. Like a lot of people tell me, oh, look, you mentioned Reddit and you told a whole bunch of people about Reddit that didn't know it already. Well, great, now they'll read both sites. It doesn't make any difference at all. And so what we've discovered is especially with blogs, like-minded sites, if they link to each other a lot, gain each other's audience. And that there's only everything to be gained by that. This whole concept of competition is very old media. It's not the 1970s where network TV didn't have VCRs. At that point, there used to be time slot competition. You'd have the Cosby Show and go and get somebody else at 8 o'clock. You can only pick one of those to watch, so the other guy loses out. But today, it's DVR on both. So I would say to a certain extent, it's actually extended out into TV now as well. There isn't really any competition anymore between shows. You could have 3 vampire shows, and people would probably watch all 3 of them. Doesn't make any difference anymore.
What have been your maybe 3 biggest challenges so far in running Fark?
The first one was starting it in 1999 because by the time it started getting big, there was no advertising to be had. So that was really interesting working along and not really knowing if it was ever coming back. I always kind of figured it would, but it's 2002 and I'm trying to figure out how to keep this site alive. Advertising should be working, but it isn't. And so the trick was just to keep the entire thing going. After that, basically scaling up, moving from the entrepreneurial stage to the running an actual business stage. That's really hard to do for most people. It wasn't easy for me, but I finally just kind of eased into it. But the third one was learning curve, which was I live in Kentucky, and I didn't know anybody who knew anything about running an online website. Nobody did. For that matter, there aren't that many websites in the world that are as large as us. So when I have questions about stuff, I don't know what the hell the answers are. And neither does anybody else, because for the most part, they haven't run into it. So I'd say learning curve was the final problem, and that's probably always going to be a problem. But luckily now I've run into people who live out in Silicon Valley and whatnot who I can call up and ask, hey, has anybody seen anything about this? And usually they get back to me.
And that's one of the awesome things about conferences such as this, because you can meet other people who maybe know as much as you do, or a little bit more sometimes.
Yeah, that's the most valuable thing.
Yes. What would you say to close off the interview are the 3 most important things in community building?
Let them do what they want to a certain extent. I mean, that may sound like it goes counter to don't let them do everything. Well, that's all. There's what they want to do, and then there's how they want to do it. So the rules apply to how they want to do it. What they want to do, if that changes all of a sudden, like let's say you have a fishing website and they all want to talk about NASCAR, all right, fine. Then split off a NASCAR site or just change the name or whatever you got to do to let that occur. Basically, you're curating it. You're not in charge of it. You can't make the community. You can only maintain it. So that's the main thing. So then not screwing it up by becoming too invested in it. Because that's the thing I've seen that's killed most communities is the site owners get involved too much with it and then end up causing their own problems and killing it. And trying to think what the other major thing would be. I'm sure there's something. I'd say basically those two are the main things. So there's a lot of stuff that goes along with that, but for the most part, it's really just kind of let it be its own organic thing and kind of take care of it and let it be. It's I guess like doing bonsai, I guess. If you're going to make it part of it, you have to sit there and kind of nip away at the stuff. But you can't actually do anything to make the entire thing, bigger or awesome all at once. You just have to kind of take care of it and see where it goes.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, and the third thing, internet rage only lasts 24 hours.
24 hours?
Yeah, if you piss off your community about something that really isn't important, they'll be mad at you for about 24 hours.
Would you say that it's really wise to respond to that immediately or to just let it die off in 24 hours?
Let it die off in 24 hours and then see if anybody's still pissed off about it. And if like 3 days to a week later they're still mad, then maybe there is actually a problem. But the good news is that most people will come around if you fix whatever it is. If you go back and you say, okay, listen, I know you guys are mad at me because I did this. Like usually it's changes to the website. I know you guys are mad at me because of this. And I've been talking to some of you and it's actually been explained to me how I was wrong. I was wrong. We will fix it. Most people will be like, oh, okay. All right, then I'm not pissed off anymore. Because it's funny, what people actually get angry about is problems that they think are never going to be fixed. What they really want to hear is, we're working on it. And even though the problem may not have been fixed, if you say, we're working on it, that's actually enough to smooth over most people's ruffled feathers, if they know that it will be improved eventually. They'll only get mad when they think that it's not going to be changed.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time.
Anytime, thanks.